A lot can happen in this legislative session that starts Tuesday, ends in June. KATU and Willamette University, the show's sponsor, bring you these interviews with legislative leaders in the order we recorded them. We begin with a portion of my questions to Republicans. With me now, Senator Daniel Bonham, who's the Senate Republican leader, and Representative Christine Drazan, House Republican leader. Thank you both for your time.
Thank you.
We appreciate you being here. 25 legislative session about to start. What are the priorities for Republicans? And Christine, let's begin with you.
Yeah, it's Oregonians are the priority for us. And that means affordability, lowering taxes, making sure that this next 6 months puts them at the center of every single conversation. That, I mean, if you had to really, just kind of synthesize it down, it's that this session needs to focus on them, not the systems, not the bureaucracy, not the special interests. Oregonians are struggling, and they need to be at the middle of all these conversations.
Daniel, anything to add to that?
I think the nice thing about a long session is fresh off of a campaign season. And we still do retail politics. We still go door to door. We're talking to people. And I can't tell you a door knocked that had a desire to see us move further in an extreme manner. It really was the basics. It was, I can't afford bacon and eggs anymore. My budget is struggling. I don't know where my kids are going to live because the cost of housing is through the roof. People are very concerned about the economy. They're very concerned about the crime and the unsafe streets that they're witnessing with their own eyes. So they expect us to be responsive to what they're saying, and I couldn't agree more that that's got to be the focus.
And affordability, obviously a big issue for Oregon. What can you realistically do to help them? What can you do from legislative standpoint?
I think specifically on housing as a very key example. Right now, the only thing that is of any benefit for a new home buyer is that we're going to reduce your down payment from 10 to 3%. Those are the types of programs that are out there. Well, when you can't afford the house to begin with, a lower down payment doesn't benefit you because it only raises your monthly payment. And so we have to get real about the cost of housing, which means we've got to talk about supply, we've got to talk about land use, we've got to talk about the regulation and the burden that this administration has put on markets, period. And so there's a lot of things that we can do to start rolling back cost pressure on housing specifically, because that's probably the #1 thing I heard about from people. Grandparents concerned about their grandkids, parents concerned about their kids, where are they going to live? And so that's something that we could do tangibly and could have a real impact sooner than later.
Rising energy prices, big too. Christine, anything you do about that?
It's a huge problem right now. I mean, when you're seeing 50% increases in a matter of a few short years, we've got a problem. And people don't often understand the impact of what we talk about in the regulatory environment, and it's kind of wonky, but that is what drives those costs. When you have mandates on these energy providers, when you take away access to base, cheap, affordable power, and you say you're going to have to go out there and innovate and create all new power sources, and they have to be green by our standards, it's expensive. But on the affordability side in particular, you talk about housing, but we also need to recognize that throwing more money at that hasn't changed anything. We've spent $2 billion in tax dollars in the last couple of years, and the governor's proposing another $2 billion in this current budget. And that is not and has not moved the needle for everyday Oregonians. We don't have more housing permits out there. They're suddenly just taking off to meet the demand. And so this status quo concept that we're just going to throw money at these problems hasn't worked, and we need to change course. And on the affordability side, it's energy, it's housing, and in particular, when we talk energy, we can't overlook gas prices. And there's a lot of conversation right now about raising the cost at the gas pump. And there's a lot of conversation about why. But I'm just here to say that until these agencies start to perform for Oregonians and do their job, we cannot be going back to Oregonians with our hand out and telling them, we're going to ask you to pay more, but we're not going to provide any more to you on the government side. We want you to pay more for less. That's not okay anymore. It's not okay with Oregonians. And I don't think it ever has been, but we're getting at kind of a tipping point.
You talked about housing a little bit. Governor Kotek has set a goal, building 36,000 new housing units per year. That goal has not been met. Any additional steps the legislature should take at this point to increase housing production? What do you think?
We need to listen to the people that are out there building houses, and they are not looking for the governor to just produce public housing, which is what her proposal does. It's a lot of government-funded, government-subsidized housing. So we need to listen to developers, and they are asking for us to expedite permitting. To this time value of money is very, very real for them, and we need for the, again, I hate to use the word regulatory, the part of this that's the bureaucracy's problem. We need to kind of dial that back, and we need to be able to expedite this stuff. It's a priority. We need to act like it's a priority.
High rate of homelessness, of course, particularly in the Portland metro area, but also throughout the state of Oregon. What legislative actions do you support to provide more shelter and services for the homeless folks?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. Like, what is the solution to housing and homelessness, period? Is it simply more units, more beds, more places to sleep, or is it getting people off of their addiction? Is it getting people a job that can sustain them in the long run, to have financial freedom to make a decision on where they want to live to begin with? I think a lot of the things fundamental to homelessness have nothing to do with whether or not we have enough homeless shelters or beds, period. I think they're fundamental problems core to our economy that are failing people, core to the way we approach addiction and mental health that really need to be serviced. I think that's where we need to focus, on the behavioral health side, on the economy side, to make sure that people, once they have employment, that then they can afford to make that decision for themselves. And going back, if I could, for the 36,000 unit goal that Governor Kotek had, like, that wasn't necessarily the American dream. That wasn't a single family residence. That was just units. And coming yesterday, there was a meeting with the multifamily housing folks, and they absolutely said there won't be a market tomorrow if you do anything to us in this legislative session. Like, the one request they have is, please, God, do nothing else to us. The cost of building materials, the cost of money right now to borrow for these folks to leverage assets to build a new unit. They're two of the largest multifamily home construction companies that are doing nothing right now. The first time in almost 35 years that they don't have a new development in the works. So we do have some fundamental problems that are because of the regulatory environment, that have driven up the cost of goods, that have driven up the cost of just doing business here in Oregon, that need to be addressed.